Good afternoon. Welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I am your host, Gayle Dendinger. This is actually the first time I've run the clock and run an event by myself. So I am so scared right now that I can't hardly stand it. I do have a little bit of alcohol as a pick-me-up, so if as we go through the conversation, if I get a little bit sloppy or whatever, please forgive me. Today I am with a gentleman named Mark Spitz. First of all, Mark, I am so jealous that you have a name that people recognize that has to really help as far as your recognition. Like my name, Gayle Dendinger, my middle name is Alphonse. I've got three names that ain't too cool, and you're cool right away.
Well, only for people over a certain age,
right,
who can remember back that far. I also have the same middle name as that guy, that swimmer guy.
Okay, and what's the middle name?
Andrew.
Okay, and do you swim?
I swim for exercise, but very slowly.
So have you learned anything from watching somebody like Mark Spitz, the Olympic winner?
Have I learned anything? Well, I think it's you learn the value of perseverance and discipline. I mean, all of these swimmers are very disciplined. If you've ever seen swim practice, they get up early, 5 in the morning, day after day. It's a very discipline-oriented sport, from what I understand. Again, never having done it, but I think it's the discipline and the perseverance that gets you to the higher levels.
Well, here in Colorado, we've got Missy Franklin, so we're
She's
very
fabulous.
blessed.
Yeah, we love Missy.
And I've had a chance to meet her, and she's a wonderful young lady, and I agree with the discipline and the way she treats people and the way she's humble. She's a great asset for our community. Mark, I asked you to do this interview with me because I thought you brought something to the table that I, as a business owner, could actually use from time to time. So your background is that of an attorney, as a business attorney, and you have an idea of fractional use, that you can come in and be like a fractional CEO or temporary CEO, a fractional legal counsel. Can you tell us a little bit about that concept?
Sure. In recent years, the concept of a fractional CFO or a CIO, a Chief Information Officer, or a Chief Marketing Officer has grown for companies in a certain size range, whether revenue or employees, that may not be able to afford a full-time CFO or CIO, but they need that higher level strategic perspective that those people bring. They just don't need it full-time, or they can't afford that kind of executive full-time. Maybe they need it 1 day a week, 2 days a week, a certain number of hours per month. For a good number of years, some law firms have offered this. They call it an outside general counsel. So the company, again, may not have the need or the resources for a full-time in-house general counsel, but they can hire outside law firm lawyers who offer that service. What's a little different in my background is I worked as an in-house attorney in corporate settings for 15 years, which most attorneys have not done. Most attorneys are in law practices.
Right.
I was a general counsel of a company, so I think when you work in-house, it gives you a different perspective on business, on how business is run, on how you look at risk from a business perspective as opposed to a strictly legal perspective. So again, this is another growing area. A company may use someone like this, 1 day a week or a certain number of hours per month as needed, and that can always change with what the company needs.
So Mark, we've been in business now 36 years. My son David is an attorney. He went to DU Law School, and I think he got an advanced degree in LLM, I think, out of St. John's University in New York. And my number one fear over the years was this mounting mess that lurks behind the day-to-day, that you have no idea when it's going to raise its ugly head. And I think a lot of small businesses are like that. You know that you should do something, don't know what to do, don't know where to start, and you really don't have very much defense when this pops up. So when you're working with somebody, how do you start? Like, let's say you're interviewing me today, and you wanted to find, and I'll kind of go back a few years, we didn't have an in-house attorney, but why don't you help me figure out where we might have needs? Is that okay?
Sure. And I think this is applicable to the other areas as well that we talked about, a CFO or CIO level person, given that they have a lot of experience and have that higher strategic level view, is knowing what questions to ask, because as you just said, the business person may not know what he or she doesn't know, may not know the questions to ask. So what I do, my approach, I come in with a checklist.
Okay.
If you've ever seen a pilot get ready for a flight, they've got a checklist. And to me, that's where you start. There's certain basic things about the company that you can ask, certain questions, which help you uncover what the issues are, going from things as simple to how the company is organized, to employee issues, to the contracts. Maybe a company's been using the same contract for 15 years and never updated it. Maybe their employee policies are out of date from the way the law has been changing. So to me, you start with asking questions on the different categories that can create the most risk for a company if they're not attended to. And as you and I talked about before we started the interview, it's all about managing risk. The only way to eliminate risk is to close up shop. And
isn't that the biggest risk of all, starving to death?
Well, it's a certainty. It's not a risk. It's a certainty.
Okay.
But if you don't, if you're not earning, a profit in the business, so it's really, managing risk, trying to mitigate it and minimize it where you can, but recognizing that a company has to take certain risks, but they're always calculated. And the idea is to manage that risk so that the business can focus on other areas, growing the business, being profitable, expanding if necessary. And one of the things a lawyer can do is, like other areas, is help identify risks, manage those so that the business people can focus on growing the business.
So I'll bet there's kind of a tendency of people living with their head in the clouds, whatever, and they don't realize that there's as much risk and danger out there. Like, this could never happen to me. Is that pretty common? Well, or either I have wishful thinking, or
it's not so much head in the clouds as maybe it's not as keeping your head down. You're focused on the business. You're focused on certain issues growing the business, whether it's your sales, whether it's costs. So it's really just a matter of often not having the time or the energy or the bandwidth, as some people say, to focus on those other areas. And that's why people with expertise, whether it's in marketing or IT or the legal area, can come in and provide that outside perspective. Other organizations can be very helpful. Mastermind Groups, Vistage is another one. Colorado Trusted Advisors. These are groups of peers who get together. I know that you've been involved with Vistage for many years, and you get together and share problems and issues with your peers, other business owners, and that can be a different perspective than a marketing person or an attorney, for example, brings in. But all those perspectives can be helpful.
So I want to talk about Vistage in a minute, but you mentioned Mastermind Groups, and I believe that's Napoleon Hill.
I think that's one. Yeah, there's a lot of different ones out there.
Okay. I think he was the original mastermind. Yep. He had a book that was called Think and Grow Rich, and that was the one book that I had before I started this company many years ago. I'm not sure it helped at all, but at least I had a book to go clutch on to. So, and what you're talking about right now is bringing in outside people. In the past, I have brought in different consultants, and what they primarily wanted to do was to go research everything that's going on in the organization so that they could set up a number of hours. And then after interviewing everybody and coming up with a really, really big check or a big bill, then, nobody liked each other. And right now we're dealing with two kinds of people that are consultants. We have one that has that old traditional thing, And through Vistage now, we have found some absolutely incredible people that are specialists. And for the first time in many years, we are actually working with outside consultants, and these people are doing a fantastic job. So I think that the niche you're doing right now has a great benefit for a lot of people. So I think there's a model out there that's starting to work, and we're looking at this in our IT department right now, and we're also looking at this in our accounting department. And if we did not have an in-house attorney, we would look at it a lot more on the outside. But just to let you know right now, by you being here and taking time, we are also going to start talking to you, see if there's some ways that you can help us out, because I appreciate your approach.
Well, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. And to your point about the consultants coming in, you know, part of what you have to do as the client is make sure you define the scope of work, so it's not open-ended. You know, I can certainly come in as a lawyer and say, hey, I've got this list 5 feet long of things to cover, but I would probably start with questions to find out what do you know is keeping you up at night. Start with that, and then try to uncover other issues, but certainly not to make it open-ended. Again, I don't see what I do so much as a consultant who comes in, turns over every stone, and sends a bill and a report. It's more if companies' legal needs are ongoing and they feel like they've been spending too much on outside legal fees and they can't budget for it, or they haven't been doing anything. It's more to help with those ongoing legal needs. And say after 2 or 3 months, you decide, hey, we need you more, or hey, we need you less. You revisit that. You know, it's hopefully an ongoing relationship, but one that's flexible to meet the needs of the service provider and the company, and not meant to be one-sided.
So do you find that a lot of CEOs, I'm just going to use myself as an example, I don't know if I'm typical or not, but I really don't like taking all the time to define a scope of work. I would like you to make things better for me, and I don't want it to cost very much money. Is that kind of, have you run into that before?
I have, and having been an in-house attorney myself, having to hire outside attorneys, I've been a client. So I'm sensitive to the cost of those services and the need to be cost effective. When you think about it, charging an hourly rate it's a perverse incentive. You know, why should I do something in 1 hour that I could stretch out to 2, right? So that's why, for example, the fractional model can be helpful if it's a specific amount of money per month that the company can budget for, and they know they're going to get a certain amount of time and services. So, you know, one of the things as the expert in any field, law or other fields, should be able to come in and do is say, here's the things I can help you with. If there's things here that you don't feel you need, or you don't feel you need at this time, then we skinny down the scope.
So the reason why the consultants we're working with right now are working very well is because we are actually defining the scope of work ahead of time. And I really had no idea that that was part of the process. So it's not that consultants can't do a good job. It really has to be a little bit more definition and a little bit more work and concentration, it seems, on the management team or the CEO.
I think putting in some of that effort up front, even though CEOs may not like to, I think putting in some of that effort up front does help create a better defined scope of work, whatever the project is, which will make it more cost effective and keep the costs more predictable. It's sort of like, I guess you could say, an ounce of prevention. Let's you know, do a little bit up front, and then we know what we're doing. And if we need to expand it later or contract it, we will. But I think a little bit of that pre-work certainly makes the whole process more helpful. And to me, a lot of it is managing expectations. You know, what's the client's expectations? I don't think you'd want me or another person like that, like you said, to come in and turn over everything, talk to everyone, spend a lot of time and create a huge bill. And For me, what I'm trying to do in this area is to make it predictable for the client, not do it hourly. That's a thing that drives clients crazy.
Right.
It's more, let's define what you need,
Right.
and then have a predictable monthly spend on this, which you can budget for, which you like to do, and then I, as the service provider, know what you need,
Right.
and we can always revisit it down the road.
So John Icard, who was the CEO of First Bank, very, very wise man, and he said that every business person can remember the time that they thought they were going to die as a business. So I would imagine that you've been in a situation now where some of your clients thought that they were dead or they were going to die, and you came in there and kept them living. Can you give us some general examples of one or two people or companies that you saved?
Well, I think that probably gives me a lot more credit than I would deserve. I think, the lifeblood of a company to me is more, sales, revenue, controlling costs, and managing the legal risks. I think that's certainly important. So I don't know that nobody comes to mind that I've actually saved. I think there's certainly people that I've helped. I mean, I have one client who does sales consulting. So
Okay.
he helps companies build sales teams.
Right.
This just came to mind.
Okay.
He helps companies build sales functions.
Okay.
And he sent me his contract that he's been using for several years.
Okay.
And because he had his biggest engagement ever coming up.
Okay.
And he had sent it to the client, and of course he sent it to his prospective client before he ever showed it to me. And I looked at it and I said, well, there's nothing here that limits your liability. And this gets into more technical legal stuff, but the business listeners have probably seen limitation of liability provisions in a contract saying that we're not liable if you, the client, you lose money, you don't follow our advice, you can't sue us for, unlimited amounts. I said, you don't have anything in there limiting your liability if they don't follow your advice properly and they end up losing money or they don't make as much money as they expected. You should have something saying that you're not on the hook for any more than they paid you. Right now, it's unlimited.
So then did you help rewrite the contract? Did it get a second contract, or was it too late?
It was a little too late in that case, but I said, going forward, we're going to do a better contract that protects you better and limits your exposure, because right now it's unlimited. And I'm sure your your customer contracts have some language in there that reasonably allocates and limits the risk and the liability between you and your customers.
We actually have many, many contracts that are totally unreasonable.
Well, if you can get away with that, I guess that's good.
Right. Well, that's why it's nice to have somebody go read the contracts, because you have no idea what you're signing and how big your liability could be.
Yeah, and I used to work for when I was general counsel at an IT staffing company, I'd get these contracts that the salespeople from the field would send in, and it was the customer's contract, but we were the IT staffing company. We were providing IT staffing services.
Right.
Why are we using the customer's contract? And I would tell the salesperson, have you read this? Have you looked at what they've put in about deliverables, timelines, benchmarks? Benchmarking was very big.
Right.
And they say, no, I never read it. I say, well, that stuff isn't even the legal stuff. That's how are we going to deliver the services,
Right.
and you haven't read it. Why are we using their agreements and nobody has read it to see, can we even deliver this aside from just the legal issues? So one of the things I like to think I can do is ask the business questions too.
Right.
Have you thought through, can we do this?
Right.
Not just a legal issue, but can we provide this product or this service? Is it feasible? Is it practical? Because the salespeople just wanted to close the deal. They didn't care if the operations people could execute or not.
Well, I think that's what I was alluding to before. Yeah. So don't want to spend a whole lot of time. Don't want to read the contract. It can't happen to me. So there's an awful lot of responsibility that a CEO or a management team or company or sales department has to take on themselves. Then they can work well with somebody like yourself.
Yeah, and it's a combination of dealing with, legal issues, but the bigger issues are, what are we offering? Can we offer it profitably?
Right.
What are the constraints on the product or service we're offering, and then you put that into a contractual form, which also deals with some legal issues to both limit your liability and to allocate risk, because you don't want it to be completely one-sided. You want it to be a fair
Right.
contract that's good for you and good for your customer. But it's a combination of a business and a legal as well as a financial exercise. To me, as you just alluded to, it's a team effort
Right.
to put together a contract that works for the company, but also will work for the customer or the client.
So can I ask a few questions about
Sure.
personal questions? Where do you hail from originally?
I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay, and then where'd you go to law school?
I went to law school in Boston at Boston College.
Fairly good college.
Yeah, good law school. I enjoyed it as far as enjoying law school goes. Not everyone does.
Right. So then were you on a scholarship? I mean, that seems,
no.
Kid from Ohio, that seems pretty good.
No, my wife was working, so
Oh, well, my wife supported me also.
she supported me through. Well, she had gone to law school too before me.
Okay.
I worked for a few years after college. We met in college, and she went right to law school, and so she was working, and then I decided to go to law school. So,
Okay.
so I had to be nice to her. So
Sure.
she
That's how it
continued to
works.
support me.
So then how'd you get to Colorado?
We went back to Ohio and were there for about 20 years.
Okay.
And then our younger child, our son, decided he wanted to come to college out here. I had brought
Okay.
him out here to a guest ranch when he was about 6, and he
Okay.
loved it. He said, I'm not going to college in Ohio because all my high school classmates are going to be here.
Right.
He wanted to come out here, and we decided we were going to move from Cincinnati after he finished high school. Our daughter was already in college, and so we followed him out here. My wife got a job at University of Denver. She works at DU's business school, Daniels College of Business. So we followed him out here. He went to CU Boulder, and then he graduated and left. He lives on the East Coast, but we're still here.
Well, DU is a tremendous, that's where my son went to law school. It's a absolutely wonderful university.
Yeah, I taught a course as an adjunct at the law school and a couple courses at the business school
Oh, really?
on business law and international business law, and I really was very impressed with the students.
Do you find that most students like business law? I would think they do.
I think they do. If you make it interesting, as with anything, people like stories.
Okay.
I think if you make something very abstract and theoretical, it's boring.
Okay.
Law in particular. But if you relate it to people, you tell stories about people and companies and issues, then people can relate to it. I think you have to make it about people and make it stories, and then people really like that.
So what kind of person right now, we're getting within the last couple of minutes of the segment, so who would be an ideal client? Who is somebody that really could use your services?
To me, it would be a company, with maybe a couple $1 million in revenue on up.
Okay.
That finds they have ongoing legal needs, whether it's contractual issues, employee issues, related legal costs that either they find are too high and they can't budget for because they're using an outside firm that's billing them by the hour, or they know they have issues, as you said, but they just haven't addressed them.
Right.
Or they've had an issue in the past that they didn't address, and because they didn't, it ended up costing money, and they don't want
Right.
that to happen in the future. So it's companies that either know they have legal costs that are hard to budget for or too high, and they want to get more predictability, or they're not spending money and time on legal issues that they should be. And it could be a company anywhere from a couple $1 million on up,
Right.
10, 15 employees on up. And it doesn't really matter on the industry. I've worked in several industries.
Right. Well, as I told you before, my perspective on fractional experts and hiring and working with outside consultants has changed.
Good.
And so you might want to go thank the Vistage Group for that. They have brought forth an awful lot of good people. Can you tell us how people get a hold of you? You must have a website and a couple other things.
Yeah, my law firm is called Spitz Legal Counsel. That's
That's
SPITZ.
catchy, right?
Yeah, I know. So, I have a website, spitzlegalcounsel.com, and easy email, Mark, M-A-R-K, at spitzlegalcounsel.com.
And you read your emails every day?
read my emails every day.
Very good.
Sure. So you can look me up, call me, text me, email me.
I really appreciate the time that you spent this morning, and I think that your style and your mannerisms very much correspond with what business people need. I would put in a plug for you. I am putting a plug in for you.
Well,
so give this man a call.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to educate people.
Catch you later. Thank you.
Thank you.